refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. Welcome to the Dharma Bone Temple. Anyone here for the first time? Now that I've got all your hands in the air, do you want to share why you're here for the first time? What brings you here? I know I totally put you on the spot. Or you can pass completely as well. You'll pass. Perfect. Anyone else want to share why they're here? Or pass? The one trying to not make eye contact with me. Do you want to? Yes, you do. Yes. Do you want to share why you're here?
Sure. You came and spoke to my mindfulness class last semester.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I wanted to check this out.
Nice. What did I say at your mindfulness class last semester?
We had a good discussion about everything, and I wanted to get my thoughts and
nice.
Find a consistent practice.
Yeah, that's Megan's class, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, oh man, you all were stuck with me for like 2.5 hours. I have that coming up again, I think, in another week or two. Cool. That state, yeah. I'm glad you made it. Anyone else in the back who want to share why you're here?
I just wanted to learn more
about
mindfulness and meditation.
How much do you know about yourself?
Not enough.
Not enough, yeah. That's in essence the practice. We'll get into it a little bit, but most people start learning about meditation and Buddhism for various reasons. And often it's this idea that we're going to learn about something outside of ourselves. And ultimately, what I've learned through this practice is it really is just holding up a mirror and looking back at yourself. What do I think? What do I say? What do I do? And that's the nature of the practice. If you enjoy getting to know yourself and paying attention to what's going on in your mind, then you're going to love this practice. If you don't enjoy getting to know yourself and what's going on in your mind, then it'll be a little challenging. But that's why we come together, to look at really the nature of our own mind and try to do it without going too crazy. Anyone here often that wants to share why they're here? Yeah.
Trying to wake up.
Trying to wake up. How long have you been sleeping?
65 years.
65 years. Better late than never, as we say, right? Yeah. I mean, you've been at this now a whole, like 6 months?
I probably have another lifetime or two to go.
Yeah. What do you think's changed in the last 6 months since you've been trying to wake up?
I'm getting better at stopping and thinking rather than just react. To make my response a conscious choice rather than something that was just automatic.
Mm. That's great.
As I said, a very long way.
That'll change your life. Anyone else in here wish they could think a little longer before they react to stuff? Only me. All right, cool. And Al. Thanks, Al, for playing along. All right, so we'll start with the meditation practice, since that's usually why most people show up here. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin, for those who might be brand new or maybe sitting here for the first time. Nothing's going to happen to you. All right, you're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences, most likely. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. All right? You'll hear sounds. Sounds inside the room, sounds outside the room. This is life. Life is filled with chaos and sounds, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of that. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on the cushions, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten, shoulders relaxed, hands can be on the knees or in the lap. If you're on the chairs or benches, also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. You want to be aware of your posture, doing your best not to fall asleep. I'll say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought, or simply to wake you up because you have fallen asleep. Most important with the practice of meditation is don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Knowing throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds. These are not distractions, not disruptions. Simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Gently guide the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. Noticing the mind as it wanders, lost in thought. Release that thought, returning attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. and with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. And ask yourself how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than anyone in this room who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us in this room, regardless where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. This is what we get every single day. The practice of meditation is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we feel now is quite different from how we felt 20 minutes ago. It's quite different from how we felt 2 hours ago. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation is not an escape. It's direct perception into the present moment. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, getting to know what your mind does, what you say, and what you do. And that's the practice every day. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. And we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But in reality, not much changed. So what I'd like to touch on briefly tonight, there's a word in Buddhism, it's a teaching, the Pali word is mudita, means sympathetic joy. And for me, it's funny because those of you who've been stuck listening to me for a long time, for those of you who were stuck with me for 2.5 hours straight, I talk a lot about getting to know the greed, the anger, and the ignorance that we carry. It's just always been my personal approach to Buddhist practice. The Buddha taught there's 84,000 paths to waking up, to ending suffering. And he wasn't so concerned which one you followed. It's a metaphor for just realizing that there are different ways for each of us to figure out why we suffer, why we struggle, why we have discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. And the second thing he taught, the second noble truth, is the cause of suffering is greed, anger, ignorance. And so for me as a practitioner, that spoke extremely loudly to me when I first got introduced to Buddhism. Because it was like kind of the wake-up call, and it's what I was alluding to earlier, that this practice is holding up a mirror, and I had to say to myself, this is my greed, this is my anger, this is my ignorance. If I want to free myself from constant daily struggles and suffer less, I had to wake up to that. So I often take that approach when I share Buddhist teachings because that's what speaks to me, right? But that approach doesn't work for everybody, you know? I've had people say to me, I don't want to focus on my greed and anger and ignorance. That's miserable. And I say, yeah, it kind of is, you know? And so I share that there's lots of different ways to explore Buddhist teachings. So this idea of mudita, or sympathetic joy, it's a really critical and important teaching where we focus on what it's like to basically rejoice in the happiness of others. In addition to, which I'll probably touch on more at the end, rejoice in the happiness of ourselves. I guess I'll touch on that right now first. When I look at rejoicing in the happiness of self, which is interesting because the Buddha talked about overcoming the sense of self and the ego. But for me, when I look at mudita, I have to think about, okay, if I'm going to focus on greed, anger, and ignorance, but I want to rejoice in the happiness of that, I have to find humor. I have to find happiness. I have to find joy in waking up to my great anger ignorance. Otherwise, it'd be miserable, right? So to rejoice in the joy of waking up to your own ignorance. Now, if you have no greed and you have no anger and you have no ignorance, then this whole hour is going to be an absolute waste of your time, and I'm sorry. Good thing we didn't charge you. You want your money back, right? But waking up to your own suffering, rejoicing in the joy of waking up. But more often than not, I find that rejoicing in the joy of others is something that maybe we don't do enough. And I had a really funny thing happen this morning. So I'm at the gym on the treadmill. There's this person next to me. I don't know who they are, right? And there's the row of TVs, right? So you can all imagine this. And I'm looking at that TV, and this person is looking at this TV. And this person was getting really excited. I could kind of see and hear and feel like the excitement in this person. So I kind of glanced over, and I didn't know what they were really doing. It all happened kind of quick, and I looked up, and they were watching Let's Make a Deal, right? And so then I got kind of interested in, who's not interested in Let's Make a Deal, even though it's the new ones. Some of you old folks will remember that, right? So this person is watching Let's Make a Deal, and the person on the game is like getting so close to winning. And then the person ended up winning the car. The person next to me was so thrilled, was so excited, was so happy. Now, I didn't ask her, but I'm guessing she didn't know the person who won the car. It'd be kind of funny if she did, but I'm pretty sure she didn't know her. But she found so much joy and happiness in this absolute stranger that won a car, right? So while that's going on, I'm looking at this TV, I'm watching the sports, and I'm seeing a story about somebody who played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and in 2017, I think his last name was Shazon, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Somebody might know, but
Shazir.
There you go. Who'll help me out there? There you go, Shazir. Thank you very much. Are you a Pittsburgh fan?
Yep.
Oh man, I'm not at all. But I love you now for sharing that with me, right? So you're familiar with the story, yeah. And so this is one of those inspirational stories. I have goosebumps now just thinking about it. And this guy in 2017, during a game got hit. And they actually didn't even show the hit. They stopped. They do that a lot now. They don't want to see how traumatic the hit actually is. And he suffered from severe spinal cord, some sort of spinal injury. And so I'm watching it, and they're showing him on the field. And I grew up, sports is my life. And I've, nothing like that, but I've gone through things. I've seen people go through things. And so I find so much joy in seeing people's courage working through pain. Not just with sports, outside of it as well. I find so much joy in watching people be courageous and work through difficulty in their lives. But in this case, it was such an emotional story of this guy. And then they show him, he was able to dance at his wedding. And then they show him on the field, not playing again, but inspiring the team. This has been probably 2.5 years since this injury. My guess is when it first happened, it was one of those things where, maybe he'll never walk again. Really traumatic. And they show him training, and it was just this, and I'm sitting there in tears watching this story. And I was so thrilled, and I felt so much joy for this person, right? And so it was at that moment that I realized the two of us, we were doing the exact same thing. I don't know this person, she doesn't know me, we don't, the stories are completely different. But we both found joy in someone else's happiness and accomplishments. And I started to think about, how often do we really find joy in other people's happiness? There's a word that's kind of the opposite of mudita, sympathetic joy. Anyone want to take a guess at what it is?
Jealousy.
Jealousy. I'm sure none of us have ever experienced that emotion, right? It's the opposite of that, right? And jealousy, maybe not just in relationship, like intimate or personal relationship dynamics, but jealousy in other people's success. Jealousy in seeing people that we know and seeing strangers, right? Think of a moment that you've seen people experience something successful. Anyone ever had a colleague do really well and it really made you kind of angry? We got a couple brave folks here, right? When it's like, well, how come that wasn't me? How come I'm not getting that award? How come I didn't accomplish that? Like, sympathetic joy would be seeing that colleague and just being so thrilled that they did really well. That's tough, right? Now, the Buddha breaks it down. I'm not going to get into it in depth, but he breaks it down into different categories of having sympathetic joy towards those we know, towards strangers, towards family, those we love, right? And working on varying degrees of it within those specific kind of groups of people. But as always, and if you've never heard me speak, I just bring this up as something for us to explore in our lives. When and where do we have sympathetic joy for others? Like truly. And when and where do we find ourselves being jealous in others' successes? Because if we can explore this in our own minds, it teaches us a lot. And my guess is every one of us in this room has had tremendous amount of happiness and joy for others' successes. And I'm sure at some point in everyone in this room's life, we were just really jealous at something or someone, right? And if we don't practice sympathetic joy and we come from a place of that jealousy can often turn into what? Anger. I heard somebody say that, right? Or did I imagine that? Somebody said it. I imagined it either way, right? I was wishing that somebody, right? So jealousy can very quickly turn into anger. And sympathetic joy is also really tied in pretty closely with compassion, which is another kind of key word in Buddhism, not just in Buddhism, but in life, right? And I read something earlier where, and I forget exactly how he said it, but I'll share the phrase or quote, but the Dalai Lama was talking about sympathetic joy. And he said something about if we could actually have sympathetic joy for all humans, right? And he goes on to say that there's like 6 billion people in this world. The odds of us being happy by having joy for somebody else is pretty great because you have 6 billion people to try to find happiness with, which can be nice. But if we're wrapped up in ego, we're wrapped up in self, we're wrapped up in why not me, why didn't I get this, there's not much joy there. So just some thoughts on where or how we can explore finding joy in others. Anyone have great difficulty with that? Yeah, do you want to share?
Me?
Yeah,
So I was the only one that raises hand.
you're the first one I saw.
I think it's because of the work I'm in. I think it has a lot to do with social media. I find sometimes I go on Instagram and, people that are my friends, I'm like hitting hearts, but I'm bummed.
Hitting hearts, but I'm bummed. That's so great.
I mean, I'm not proud of that. But
Yeah, I appreciate your honesty.
yeah, but lately, I think more about it and wonder why I'm having it. Because I want to be happy for that person. But when they're they're on vacation in Italy and I'm not, I just feel like, why are they gonna do that? But it's social media, so it's not really believable. But I find myself getting sucked in.
But it is social media, but it is real. What you just described, and I really appreciate you kind of, opening up and having the courage to share that because, again, I'm pretty sure everyone in this room has gone through that. We have. Anyone in this room gone through that? Where you're like liking or loving somebody's post, or you're like, damn, I wish that was me. How come I'm stuck working? And so vacation in Italy is nice. I don't know. But it's funny because you said it's not real. But the thing, and I was going to touch on it probably if it didn't come up anyways, the social media aspect of it makes it even more challenging because it is so easy for just to kind of scroll through and see stuff and click on it. But then there's that inner turmoil, that bitterness, that frustration, that anger, that resentment, all that stuff comes up. Versus, wow, that's really beautiful. They get to be in Italy right now. That's what the practice is working towards. We're not there now. It might take you a few more weeks to get there, right? But that's the practice, is to recognize how far am I from actually just truly being happy for other people's joys and successes. Yeah. Anyone else want to share on that? Yeah.
Oh, my sister came into some money and
I'm just going to stop you right there for the people who didn't hear it. She kind of mumbled in a very unhappy way. Oh, my sister just, oh, your arms weren't crossed, sorry. Oh, my sister just came into some money. All right, I'll continue. I just wanted everyone to hear it.
oh, well, and she happens to be my very best friend.
Yeah.
And we're really, really close. So I just I realize that's a terrible thing for me to feel, and it's difficult. And they're in the process of planning a safari to Africa, which has been a dream of mine.
Man.
But I love her to death, but damn.
Trips to Italy, to Africa, like all this money is ruining our happiness. You know? So, yes, your sister came into money. She gets to plan your dream trip to Africa.
Mhm.
My guess is the invitation to you hasn't come yet.
Not so much.
Not so much. And it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And again, I don't ask people to share to have the answer or response. I never have any real answer. But these are beautiful things to become aware of. To like recognize, like you said, for those who didn't hear, it's your sister, it's your best friend, and you love her to death. And she got a bunch of money and is going to Africa, and you're still unhappy about it. Like, that's the crazy thing about sympathetic joy, is how difficult it is to cultivate that.
Mhm.
Great awareness. Anyone else? Those are tough to top, yeah.
I've been a wreck lately, an emotional wreck, and I've been seeing a therapist. And I see you as a therapist.
Good. Yeah, go ahead.
You have all this stuff. But I also see you as a Saturday, I want to do a Saturday Night Live skit.
I do too. Let's do it. Yeah, I want to do like stand-up act and sit down.
I mean, you recite the same things every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm not really sure what that has to do with sympathetic joy, but that's okay. Nothing. That was great. Yeah, so if you didn't hear, she's been a wreck.
I think people come here and see you as a therapist.
Yes. I've had a lot of people tell me I'm a lot cheaper than therapists.
You are.
Yeah. I often say, for those who are here maybe for the first time or new, that half the people here are probably in therapy, the other half are probably therapists, and we all get along together. And no, I'm not pairing you up, right? That's a disaster waiting to happen. But the truth is that, yes, so often people come to meditation or Buddhism, to kind of add to what Melanie's saying, is that people come to meditation or Buddhism because we're struggling, we're suffering. As the Buddha said, life is filled with lots of struggles and suffering and challenges. I mean, look at the things that were just shared. People we know are on vacations, people we love are going on beautiful trips, and that causes us angst. So imagine things that are like, not that, how much struggle we have. And so you can come into meditation and Buddhist practice and in a way use it in a therapeutic manner. The difference, and this is, you've heard me say this because you just said I repeat the same thing all the time, which I do. But for those who maybe have never heard me say this, the difference from Buddhist practice so much and therapy is that therapy, a lot of it is kind of focused on me. I'm suffering, I am this, I am that, I need this, I want this, I didn't get this happened to me. It's all about me. Buddhist practice says the fact that you're focused on all about you is actually the reason you're suffering to begin with. So if you take out that huge sense of self and that ego and that pride that says life is supposed to be different from how it is, if you can remove that, then therapy goes away. Buddhist practice goes away, and you just abide in presence as you go through your day. I don't mean like gifts, like present.
Just breathe,
which is, did you say brief or grape?
breathe.
Breathe, yes, is the breath, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure there's no correlation to you having been erect lately and not being here. There was a hand. Yeah, Al.
So once you realize, you find it hard to share others' joy, particularly if it's something you feel deprived. But now what?
Now what? Yeah, that's a good question. It's like everything we look at with this practice is first the recognition of it, right? Which is critical because a lot of us don't realize that. And I know you're saying now what, but I still want to really emphasize the fact that it's important to understand how jealousy and the ego kind of gets in the way of having joy for others or having joy for the self. Then what you do is you ponder, why? Why is this making me so unhappy? Why am I so unhappy with my life? Why am I so unpleasant in my heart and mind at times that other people's joy gives me the emotion of jealousy or anger? What is it about me that makes me feel that I am so important, that I deserve better or more than they do? I. It all comes back to the recognition of, I think I'm most important. And if we can work on in various ways, recognizing that the world doesn't revolve around Jeff or Al or the self, and we continue to work on cutting through the ego, then we begin to just find joy for others who get to experience things that they want.
My world revolves around me. I mean, who else does
It does,
revolve around?
but that's why you suffer. I mean, we've been at this for a couple of years now. I get it. Yes, Al's world revolves around Al. And because Al is still so focused on thinking Al is the center of the universe in Al's world, Al is going to suffer a lot. If Al begins to focus on the self being not the most important thing in Al's world, think about one of your boys, right? I usually don't get too personal with stuff. I like not to know anything, but I know you got at least one boy, right? You got a couple of them, yeah?
2 sons and 2 daughters.
2 sons, 2 daughters. Okay, well, so think about any of them. When it comes to you, to them, who's more important?
For the parent, I would put the kids
Okay.
first.
So
For
you,
my best friend who's going here, or a sister who's on safari when I'm here.
Yes. What I'm getting at is, I'm not saying this is easy. Nothing that we've talked about for years has been easy. But what I'm getting at is, you have the capacity, because you just said you would put them first. You have the capacity, knowing as a parent, that they are more important than you. What that means is, or whatever, however you put that into language or heartfelt, what that means is you have the capacity to recognize that other people are more important than you are. You have that ability. So in time, you cultivate, maybe not to where a complete stranger or a buddy is going to be equally as important to your child. I'm not suggesting that. But maybe the gap of you thinking you're up here and your buddy being all the way down here, maybe you can close that gap a little bit.
Even as a parent, it's not always a given. I've had jealousy of my own kids. They're doing this, they're doing that.
Yeah.
As well, because I'm out going to work, so you can do that. Once you get a job, you'll see it's not that easy.
Yeah.
But then I feel this is wrong. A parent should want the best for their kid. That I could face and make some adjustments.
Yes.
If it's a friend. I struggle with it. I'm not depressed. My life is fine. But every so often I get a poke,
Yeah.
A little jealousy.
Yes. Good to explore. Yeah, Corey.
So, since you brought up, Pittsburgh?
I thought we were done with that.
No, because you're the thing too.
Say again?
You're the thing too.
Yes.
So, sports affiliations. Now, I'm a Patriots fan, and I get a lot of jealousy coming at me. Right? right? Or Red Sox. Some people don't like the Red Sox.
It's actually not jealousy towards you, it's pretty much hate towards you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Jealousy, that turns into anger, right? Exactly. So it seems to me that we actually are in a culture of the opposite, right?
Yes, we are.
And we like that. It's like we like to commiserate with each other, and it's important. Like, can you imagine if you were at like a table of friends and the opposite team won, and you're like, yeah, you know, like you'd be killed. Yeah, you know. Same thing with tribes or anything else.
Right.
So I just think it's interesting that while we know this is a value, we also have a counter value in our culture.
Yes. Yes, and as you know, the entire body of the Buddhist teachings is expressed with the term going against the stream. And, you know, Suzuki Roshi, who built San Francisco Zen Center, and you've probably heard me say this, but he said for Buddhist teachings to enter into a new country, it takes about 200 years. He said it's like holding a flower against a rock and expecting that flower to take root in the rock, that's how difficult it is. So forget sports for a minute. Everything, for the most part, in Buddhist teachings goes against what our culture is reinforcing on a daily basis. Billions and billions and billions of dollars spent telling us what to look like, what to buy, what to wear, what to eat, where to go, what shirts, what hats, what shoes, who to hang out with. I mean, everything is spent telling us what we should be, who we should be. And this practice is absolutely going against the stream. And, you know, it's interesting because there was another one, I don't know, some of you may have seen it, you probably saw it, but there was a clip going around where it was a high school team. And baseball game, and the guy pitching, I guess, was best buddies with the kid at the plate. This was like for some championship or something like that. And the pitcher struck out the kid at the plate to win the game. And everybody on the winning team, you know, their gloves are getting thrown in the air. They're all celebrating. They're jumping up and down, hugging each other, you know. You know what the pitcher did? He ran straight to the batter who he just struck out, who was his good buddy, and he just hugged him. And he gave him a hug. You never see that stuff. I've never done that stuff, right? Ever in that world. But again, what things like this show me is that these emotions, these feelings, these actions are possible. But because we are in this way of, you know, our society and our culture is so heavily against, for the most part, everything the Buddha was teaching, it is extremely difficult. You know, I'll kind of close with these thoughts. If you are brand new to Buddhism, to understand that Sangha, which is community, at the beginning we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and we find safety, comfort, protection in the community. Because when you come together in places like this, I don't care if it's here or anywhere, you know, any sort of meditation, spiritual place, whatever you're into, you're going to be surrounded by people that, at least for that moment, are exploring and interested in the same things that you are. And that's why surrounding yourself in those communities are extremely important. Because here's the fascinating thing, right? If all, 60 of us, or however many are here, if we all just kind of like in the movies transported ourselves to like some restaurant, bar type place, and everybody in here who liked sports was watching the sports, and everybody in here who hates sports was watching something else, right? That's why I use kind of the game show and the sports analogy, right? All the people that we're talking about that do all those things, you know who those people are? They're right here. We are those people. But we also are the people that can explore it in a different way. And that's really critical, to surround yourself as much as possible around people that look at that. You have no idea how many times people have said to me, yeah, it's so nice and easy when you come here and you talk about it and look at it, but nobody out there is talking about that stuff. You're right, they're not. Unless you talk about it more. Right? Be the kind of person that runs and, And I will work on finding joy for the St. Louis Cardinals who knocked out the Cubs, right? I will work on it. Can't make any promises, but be those people that do those types of things. And that's where the Buddha said the greatest gift that you can share, he talked about dana, generosity. The greatest gift that you can share is giving the gift of the Dharma, to give the teachings, to give the practice of kindness. So when we go back to, and I really appreciate the few of you who shared about these things, because I'm sure all of us are in our heads thinking about all the people that we're pissed off at that got what we wanted or something like that, If we can think about what would it be like to even just really express tremendous joy to them in person, see what that would be like. So on that, we'll close. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Marielle during her time of rebirth, and to Brendan and their family who suffer at this time. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering.